Gmail, which is run in a public cloud. You're familiar with Salesforce.com, organizations of this nature, which tend to be Amazon organizations like that, which you can utilize the utilities and capabilities of those systems. But the negative to those is that there's really nothing directly associated with protecting you as an individual or an individual company if there's a loss there. And it wasn't that long ago that Gmail went down for an extended period of time. And really the only thing that Gmail is able to say is it will try to get you back up. They have there's nothing to commit to them that if you've lost all of your emails or something to that effect that they can get them back. There's nothing there in place. Whereas a private cloud, for instance, a disaster recovery backup solution that you contract to provide you with a service, which is an automated backup and delivery, there's a constant monitoring of your systems on a daily automated basis. So we're also looking at if there is something to have happen, what are the service level agreements to get that data back, and how is that outlined, and how do they describe their service, and how do they actually execute on bringing data back? And that's really the private cloud scenario. Or you're running an infrastructure that you may decide to take your entire infrastructure that you run your business on into the cloud and run it there. Those are private clouds, and they really have service level agreements attached to them.
Now, what are your thoughts as far as how companies view the cloud scenario? I know that, you know, as we see consumer electronics take over the world and we see all the services that are applied to that, you know, you mentioned things like Google, and, you know, probably everyone I know has a Gmail account, or, you know, they use Google Docs. There's, you know, Dropbox. There's all these things that are more, you know, we'll say consumer based. And there seems to be you know, across the board, I guess, people seem to be fairly comfortable in using those sort of cloud scenarios. Yet in the enterprise, there seems to still be, they still seem to shy away from cloud services in many ways, or at least there's that I don't want to say fear of it, but a stigma, exactly. So how do you see that?
Well, there's a couple of components there, and really, the number one concern when we talk to customers, and it's becoming alleviated to some extent, and when they talk to us, they feel much better, is really around the security of data. And that's sort of the fear in the cloud is, where is my data going? How is it getting there? Is it protected? What is in place to make sure that nobody else can look at my data or get access to the data? And these are really critical considerations. So you have to make sure that the companies that you're dealing with who provide an automated service have a security level which meets all international law requirements and security requirements. If it's not good enough for the U.S. Department of Defense, it's not good enough for you. That's really the way that we look at it. You have to have the best available in the way of protecting your data. And you have to understand what it means as well. To be compliant, if you ask our ClearCover to recover a file for you, that data is private to your organization. Does that mean that ClearCover can actually look at the information that they're pulling, or is it just a file that they're pulling and they actually can't see the information? Because if you're a medical firm of some sort, or a legal firm, or any type of compliance, or just strictly, I don't want people looking at my data, you want to make sure that provider cannot look at it. They can ship you back the file, and only you have access to it, and you better have an encryption way of getting to that data, which is also made available. So it's got to be automated, it has to be secure, that you know it's being done every day, and that no one else can see your data no matter who it is.
And so now you bring up a really good point, is that the idea is, you know, again, it's if you request a file to be restored, those type of things. And it goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the webinar, is I think a lot of people understand this concept of backup, but very few people understand the concept of restore, because I think maybe perhaps there's a misconception in the eyes of most people, is that they immediately think that because it's backed up, it's also instantaneously restored if need be. And I think there's, you know, you talk about the security, there's the ease of use scenario, whether or not your provider sees your data at any point, there's that security aspect. And how the process is, is it automated, is it guaranteed? So those are the things that, I think, again, from integrating the data backup and data restore scenario. Tell me a little bit about that and that idea that some people think just because they're backed up, they're also easily restored.
Well, if you don't mind a little bit of the story, the way we look at it and we talk to bring this up quite often, and it seems to make a lot of sense to people. If you go to the library and take out a book from the library, you have a responsibility to bring it back. So think of us as taking the data off site as being going to the library. If I take the book home and I spill coffee on top of it and now I can't see it, it's really I've destroyed the book. But now I take it back to the library, I return the book and I say, here's your book, which is basically the same thing. Here's your data. But you know what? I can't read the data because it's been ruined by my cup of coffee. And that is what happens to data. It actually, if it's not properly looked at on a daily basis and applied actual techniques to actually make sure the data and the media itself is in good shape, because media deteriorates, as you know. You can't put a VHS that's 20 years old in your VHS player. It probably won't work anymore because the media is falling apart. So it's very important that you're able to address those capabilities and have a system that will actually be guaranteed to restore. And the way you know it's guaranteed is you test it regularly. And you make sure you have systems in place that do that, and you make sure you work with a provider that can prove to you that they have a system in place to test on a regular basis that your data is in the right place and is also restorable.
Right. We also talk about things like, it's the, people talk about disaster recovery. They talk about business continuity, those type of things. And again, going up to the concept of, backup and then the data restore scenario, is it true that people should also look at the time to restore? Because I know that there's been, certain aspects that, yes, my data is backed up and, my systems went down because the toilet upstairs overflowed and came down into my office and destroyed a server sitting in a closet. And now it becomes this horror story of, oh my God, now I need my data back up immediately. Oh, but my current system, it's going to take me a week to get everything backed up.
Well, there's really a couple of scenarios which are important to remember. First of all, losing everything, your building is gone, that is the worst case scenario. And then the other scenario is, whoops, we did something wrong, an error occurred, we've lost a series of emails or files, and I need to get that data back right away because I have a presentation to do. Mm-hmm. Those are sort of the extremes of data backup. And quite frankly, 80% of what we deal with is I need to get the file back right away. So your provider should be able to show you how in a couple of minutes I can be able to access that file either through them or even do it on my own as a customer. And then be able to show me what happens if everything went and I lost and the building was no longer accessible. What is the ultimate restore capability? Does the company actually have the ability to perhaps help you operate your business in the cloud on data systems and get your business up running that way? That is full disaster recovery. And do that, they have the ability to provide services like that. That's something you definitely want to be able to look at. Or just, you know what, I've lost the server, I need to get the data back. What are the number of ways you're going to be able to get that data back to me? Is it over the wire? Or is it going to be in a disk that's returned to me in 8 hours, 24 hours? What is the actual rule you're surrounding that with? And how am I going to get my business up and running quickly and efficiently, and also just protect against normal file loss or corruption that could happen at any time?
And I think one of the things is that, Rick, you and I have discussed this with bluarc services as well, is that, bluarc is very well known for their business continuity scenarios and how everything can be back up and running instantaneously. But one of the conversations that we've always had regarding the concept of business continuity is that what constitutes a disaster as well, right? It could be anything, like you said, from the idea that we have a server simply goes down because someone does something wrong. There's oh my gosh, somebody spilled a cup of coffee into the back of the server by mistake as they were doing something, to the point where you see your building floating down the street in that force majeure kind of scenario. And do you see that how people relate to data backup and restore is that, do you get that scenario where people only think of the concept of business continuity and disaster recovery as something that is, in that category of force majeure where it's the, floods, fires, earthquakes, that type of thing, but perhaps they should be thinking about data backup and restore on a daily basis from a just, again, I mean, as a marketing person, just from a brand perspective, ensuring that you always have access to your data and thus making your clients happy. So do you see that, I guess people shy away perhaps from data backup and restore because they don't think it's needed because they, it's that, oh, that'll never happen to me?
That's for you, Dave?
That's for Rick or Dave?
Oh, that's for you, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. The number one concept is, and the way people look at it is, backup, and the way they look at backup and doing it sometimes is in front of mind, but it's not an emergency status. As soon as you need to recover something, it becomes an emergency. And that is really, and often the people that are willing to invest the most in making sure they have secure backup systems and restore systems are those who have already suffered some sort of failure and loss, and they couldn't get it back, or their business was in jeopardy, their brand was in jeopardy, or it was simply something very simple. But those people certainly understand more clearly if you haven't lost something. It's an insurance policy of your data, and data is recognized as being the second most important asset that your organizations have next to your people. And so that's why you have to keep it, because you don't function, you don't bill, you don't invoice, and you don't receive money unless you can get your data back effectively and be able to operate.
So what you're saying is don't go to your doctor just when you're sick.
That is absolutely correct. And make sure that you understand the plans that can be put in place, and that there's alternative ways of doing everything. But make sure your provider can deliver those alternatives and clearly outline them to you to find out what's the best solution for you.
One of the reasons I wanted to bring ClearCover's message about backup and restore to our customer base is because even myself, and I've been in IT for a long period of time, I've always thought of backup and restore as being an all or none scenario, force majeure. If I just back up everything, then I can recover everything. But the reality is most instances of restore aren't force majeure. They're the incremental things, the small bits. Mm-hmm. Sure, it's great if I have everything backed up and I can restore it if something does happen, but what is it that I need to back up? Can I suffice with incremental restores or incremental backups? What is it? And that's the whole concept to me that is really important for our customers to understand, is that just backing everything up isn't good enough. And in fact, it's only useful in the absolute worst case scenario. It's rare that happens. It's great to have a policy, but think about something more profound.
It's again, I think it speaks to the nature of human beings in this day and age, where it's like, I need everything now. And that really, it does translate to business on both sides of the fence, is that, as Rick said, it's one thing to back up, your entire system. But what about those little things where, oh no, I lost an email from yesterday for whatever particular reason that had one of the most important contracts or bids that in the history of our company, and I can't get it and I need it back now, right? That's where this kind of scenario, I think, obviously comes into play, which, would probably alleviate a lot of the stress in most people on a daily basis anyway, just knowing, again, as you said, Dave, is that it's that insurance policy that's always there for you.
And that's absolutely right. And we look at our customers' data, and we help them understand what data is, how old the data is, the type of files that it is, and what needs to be stored for immediate access and what doesn't. And we actually say to them, you know what, why you don't need to back this stuff up because you haven't touched it for 2 years, but we can have that locally as opposed to remotely. But we look at the value and how you value your data, and we give you guidance because people don't know, but once we've worked with them, we're able to help them clarify more clearly what's most important to their business and what needs to be up and available right away, like that one email with your contract. How do I get that back in minutes? And we help them do that effectively and know that they're safe.
Excellent. So this brings us to the next topic, and I think it's, as most people see, it's this whole idea of, well, let's put it in this scenario. Everybody here lives somewhere. Why do you live there? It's all about location, right? Real estate is always important. Whether or not you're close to shopping or close to the golf course, whatever you may your lifestyle is about. Realistically, location has a lot to do, oddly enough, with the concept of data backup and restore. As we mentioned before, there's certain legalities that go along with this idea of where your data resides. And I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize that once your data does perhaps leave your country, it is subject to different laws. Anyone can perhaps then look at that information. And, as much as we even, obviously we're very good friends and have very close relations with our neighbors to the south of us, it still doesn't mean that their laws are not different than ours and perhaps are interpreted differently. So if you could tell me a little bit about this idea of this sort of, the international law and legalities and where your data is stored and why that affects businesses on a daily basis, as well as just even, from a functional perspective.
Well, number one, there's a number of different compliance and regulations that are in the world today across every aspect, all over the world. In Canada in particular, if you're a Canadian company, you want to keep your data in Canada. You don't want it going to another country. And the United States is probably where a lot of backup services send their data. And they're exposed, unfortunately, to the Patriot Act, which really gives organizations, the U.S. government, the capability to go into any data center and extract information, data on a company without a warrant, without reason. And we actually had this story, a real-life story, was that an organization had their data stored in the U.S. The U.S. government actually came in and they were not the target of the data being recovered by the U.S. government. It was another company, but they just simply picked up the server that had all of these companies' data in it and walked away with it. So hundreds of companies were affected, not just the one that they were trying to get after. So I mean, that's a very scary scenario, of course, but keeping your data in Canada is extremely important. What type of, and also analyzing what type of data center is the data going into? Is it is it the basement of someone's house that or a business with raised floors and inappropriate security, or is it a benchmark SAS 70 data center? And SAS 70 is basically a fully audited data center that has all the redundancy capabilities built in. Generators, proper audit processes for receiving diesel fuel, protection against water, the right type of gas is being used to extinguish fire. All of these things take place for that. This data center, if everything goes scorched earth, it's still going to be up and running for months upon months, even if the rest of the city doesn't have power. And that's the type of data center you need to have your data in, because otherwise potentially your business is never going to open again if you don't have the data.
There you go. Now, one of the things, getting back to the legal aspects for a moment, is there any advice that you can give to the listening audience today? I think a lot of companies and organizations perhaps may not even know what the laws are that pertain to their particular organization or types of organizations. What should they do to understand, the ideas between U.S. law, Canadian law, as well as the laws and regulations and compliance that apply to their organization?
Well, first of all, there are, as I say, a number of regulatory compliance requirements that are there. And we've got some white papers that we would be happy to share with your companies about what rules fall under what. So there are a number of legal requirements, and it's changing on a daily basis. Health rules for healthcare in the United States are currently different than healthcare rules for Canada for protecting data, but they're changing every day and increasing the requirements. And eventually your data protectors will have to be companies that are certified by the Health Act to do that. We put in place the processes that the U.S. are using right now because we know that it'll be coming to Canada in the near future. But every legal organization has a requirement to keep data, whether it's 7 years, indefinitely, and it's important to know what those are. We can give you some guidance as to what those are, but your own associations that you deal with as a company will probably be able to give you information as well. But we can certainly guide the companies in our consultation towards getting the right information.
Excellent. That is wonderful news. Now, as we go on to the next topic, and this is an important one because it's, I have to say that it's always impressive to see companies that put their money where their mouth is, and you guys are definitely willing to do this. For everyone that is, taking part in the webinar today, you're offering a free trial, I guess, if you would, and that they will receive a 1-year free single device backup and restore solution of up to 5 gigabytes.
That's right. We're happy to have you use our service and see how good it is. This is an endpoint device service that we provide. Our solution at ClearCover works on everything from massive enterprises to single laptops, PDAs, and tablets for backing data up. And those are single endpoint devices, which we're happy to provide that service to you to try it out, test it, and you'll get a feeling for our other services that we can provide to you. But this will provide your data, secure it on laptop or desktop, whatever works for your organization.
That's excellent. So now I guess we're going to go to the part of the webinar where we get some questions going from the listening audience. And we have several coming in already, so obviously people are very interested in this. The first question is this: what if I lose my physical site? Do you have the capability or partners where I can restore to a new environment?
Yes, we do. We have the ability to take you into the cloud, and we have different service level agreements to address that. Some companies actively have a live site right up that they're replicating their data on a minute-to-minute basis. To those that will be provided with VPN access and get their systems up and running within an 8-hour time frame, a 4-hour time frame, based on how we set up the service level agreement to meet their requirements. But definitely, we can give you virtual disaster recovery to the cloud. Excellent.
So now we have another question, and this is, well, I guess everybody is sort of addicted to we'll call them consumer electronic devices, but it's, can you back up mobile devices or remote locations?
Absolutely. Remote locations and mobile devices are a key functionality of our system. So if you have offices all over the country, we can set a strategy to back up those offices. Mobile devices, everything from a fleet of 5,000 laptops that need to be done down to 1. Tablets right now we're doing both iPads and Android-based tablets and PDAs for Android and iPhones as well have that capability of backing data up. Now organizations may look at that and say, well, I can do iCloud or something. You can do that, but most corporations are now setting standards that do not allow the use of iCloud in any organization.
And again, you're right. The iCloud scenario also goes back to the legal aspects as well, because as we know, as much as they have, a data center the size of a small country in the U.S., it's in the U.S. So right on.
That is absolutely true. And it's not safe because they don't know where their corporate data is sitting out there with someone else's. Who knows what the ability to protect against another corporation seeing their data. There's nothing in place to suggest that. Our system allows for complete protection of data.
Excellent. So on to the next question, and this is coming from a company, obviously they're doing something right. This is it easy to run a recovery exercise to practice? My company has a disaster exercise once a year. Can we still do this with a quote-unquote live system?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I'm glad. We have the ability to do either full active test restores at any time while the system is up and running, a full restore, without any issue at all. We also have the ability to run a synchronization of a restore, which is called a validation test restore. And we in that situation, we look at we actually create the backups, we do the restores, and we can test and show the customer how to do it on their own, or we can do that do that for them. And the other area which we do, which is even slightly attached to it, is we also have the ability to run tests to see where your data is and what it is, and we actually do a network scan and be able to tell you the age of all your data, the types of files that you have. If how do I protect PDFs if they don't really need to be protected? I can exclude those from my backup sets. So we can customize the entire backup and then automate the process to give you a review of your data sets on a quarterly basis. You will simply have a report that will show up and allow you to do those tests and reviews. So we're very, very detailed on what we're able to do from a testing and from an analytics point of view.
Wow, that's excellent. Well, Gentlemen, I'm looking at our timer here, and we're coming up exactly on the 30-minute mark, as we promised all of the listeners. We don't want to take up any more time of anyone's schedule today. So I thank you both very, very much for this webinar, and it's been incredibly informative. And for everyone listening, if you have any questions, obviously you can contact either bluarc or the professional at hand here as far as any of the your questions regarding data backup and restore. And at the same time, within the next couple days, this webinar will also again be on YouTube or from the bluarc site. So if anyone wants to listen to it again, it'll be there. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.